So, guys, I want to talk about MJF, and I do want to say that out of AEW, it's a clear fact that he's obviously, the best homegrown talent that they ever had. And honestly, they ever do a Hall of Fame for AEW, it would be a slap in the face if they don't put him in first. Maybe they're going to put Old Man Sting in first, or Jeff Jarrett's going to do more Jeff Jarrett politics. But just to be serious, he's their best homegrown talent. And I think in second place would be Swerve Strickland. But with that said, MJF has done, amazing work. And yes, he did headline the AEW All In show at Wembley Stadium. And yes, people can say that, oh, well, what the selling point was Wembley Stadium. Yes, but they also have had to have a card to actually, sell to the crowd, really. So definitely MJF being a headliner of a show of over 70,000 people says a lot. And it also says a lot that he's a homegrown talent because, a few years before then, people didn't know who the fuck he was. He was esoteric. So with that said, we're at a point with MJF right now where he's kind of a little lost on the card, really. Like, we don't really know, what he's going to do. What's his plan going to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years for the rest of his new contract. And there are some people saying that he should be the world heavyweight champion. And I think that that's totally appropriate because you don't want to take somebody and you don't want to downgrade them. But I've also thought to myself, what about if MJF was in the tag team division? So I want to talk about the positives and the negatives. I think the first positive would be that I think his best tag team partner would be Wardlow. He can talk about, we've talked together, I'm paying him more money, I'm actually giving him connections in Hollywood, and Wardlow has a lot to show, really. So if you do something where MJF is the tag team champion with Wardlow, you can do something where he faces a bunch of jobber teams or private party, and you have Wardlow do a bunch of 2-on-1 matches. And that would be good because you're building a big man. And eventually, Wardlow can have a big ego and then just beat up MJF and then become a single star. Or, Wardlow can kind of see the pattern and say, I gave you a second chance, shame on me, but this time I'm not going to be a fool. He takes out MJF, and then you make Wardlow a strong star, really. So this ultimately, I think in my storytelling, I would have MJF and Wardlow, rebuild Wardlow, make Wardlow also a person who has like 2-on-1 matches, really. And that would be really, really great. The other issue is Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. The big problem with them, and the only problem that you have, is that they don't have a lot of credible opponents. Because, again, Samoa Joe and Hook would be a great team to face them. And then they also have the Outrunners. But they just beat Private Party, and Private Party, the Young Bucks, Top Flight, they're all like examples of teams that don't look like they're legit, really. Even if you had Shane Taylor Promotions, you have to have, a big man and a small guy. You have to have Shane Taylor and like Leo Rush or somebody else, really. You have to kind of do like the big man versus big man dynamic. You can do Takeshita and Fletcher or Brian Cage and Lance Archer against, Shelton Benjamin and also and Bobby Lashley. And that is I'm sorry, you guys. And that definitely is and definitely that is appropriate. But then you kind of argue, okay, the other issue with the whole tag team division is that you don't have a lot of people that can talk on the microphone that well, really. Like, honestly, you would have to have Mark Briscoe and another member of Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy, or you would have to do the Don Callis family, or you have to have Brian Cage talk more, Shane Taylor talk more. And then you also have to have Rouge talk more, Jake the Snake Roberts. But the point of it is that definitely there are some people in the tag team division that could be good opponents for Bobby Lashley and Shelton, and then there's plenty of people who are not appropriate for that. And I think my worry is ultimately, who's going to beat Shelton and Bobby Lashley. Because you can do Private Party going through a bunch of people, and then you can do the Outrunners because they can lift, they're strongmen wrestlers. But the problem with the Outrunners is they fucking clown around too much. And then the other issue is that you could have the Young Bucks. And do you want to see Bobby Lashley give them spears and then he loses to a super kick party type of thing? Really, it would hurt Lashley. So if you have MJF and Wardlow, you have like the big man, the small man, the big man, and the talker man. type of dynamic, really. So that would definitely, help out a lot, really. And then also the last part of it is the last of the good side of it is the tag team division is abysmal. That it got destroyed last year when they put the titles on the Young Bucks and the EVP faction for such a long time. You went from having the ranking system in the tag team division. The wins and losses matter. You had that great conclusion with Darby and Sting, and then the Young Bucks got the titles and they rarely defended the titles. A lot of people who were in the trio, a lot of people in the tag team division went to the trios division, and you've not really followed that through, really. And even nowadays, when you had Private Party beat them, it's kind of like, who's Private Party? You didn't build them up. They were just people on the roster losing a lot and not doing that well, and automatically they became Super Saiyan. And then they beat the Young Bucks, and then they jobbed to Lashley and Shelton, really. So you don't have a good tag team division. There's people like Roosh, who's a legitimate big guy, and you have Mortos, who I feel is very underrated. And it's almost like you ask yourself, who could be a good opponent for them? Who can actually, bring out the best in them? So if you have MJF and Wardlow run crazy in the tag team division, you're going to have more competition. And then also, like I've said, you have to have a tag team division of talkers. So, like I said, Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy. Mark Briscoe is a talker. You have Brian Cage, who can talk. You have Don Callis, who can talk. You have Christian and Nick Wayne, or Christian and Luchasaurus, who can talk whenever he comes back, really. You have Rouge, who can talk. You have Jake the Snake Roberts, who can talk. And you know what I mean by who can talk. I mean, that's somebody who can cut promos, who can have bravado and instigation. What about Samoa Joe and Hook versus the Hurt Syndicate? Or what about Samoa Joe and Hook versus MJF and Wardlow? That would be a really great team. There's so many dream matches that you can do. But it would revitalize the tag team division. It would make it must-see. It would make it compelling. It would have characters and egos and violence and drama, really. So there's a lot of positives by having MJF in that division. But there are a couple of downsides. The first thing is that Wardlow is his best tag team partner. I would say the second person would be Ricky Starks. But the problem is if you do Wardlow, it's like what I said, really. That didn't Wardlow realize that MJF was taking advantage of him, and didn't Wardlow join the Undisputed Kingdom and the people who beat down MJF? So there's a plot hole in that. Even if you said, okay, they just had a beer, they forgave it, and Wardlow wants to be in a tag team division because he can have 2-on-1 matches to show how dominant he is. So he's just building up those wins, so that way when he challenges for the singles world heavyweight title, he's legitimate. That would be the story that I would tell. But people would say that that's plot holes, because you don't go from two people hating each other to two people being friends with each other, like they have a mental imbalance. The other thing is that you run the risk of Adam Cole and MJF, part 3. Part 1 was when MJF was a champion. Part 2 was really 2024. And then part 3 would be is if you have Wardlow and MJF. Because what would happen if they attacked the Undisputed Kingdom? Or you said it's something like Wardlow felt betrayed because you see the Undisputed Kingdom and where's Wardlow? They left him at home. Or they just said something like, oh, well, you know what? We just don't need him. He's not he's one of their friends, but he's not in the inner group of friends, really. It creates part 3 with MJF and Adam Cole, where they should not even have them feud or go after each other, for 5 years, really, because they've done so much with each other and they've drawn it out, and that's not a great thing. It kind of can create another opportunity for that to happen. So that's one of the things. The next big thing I think a lot of people are pointing out is the title has to. It's two things. The heavyweight championship picture. It's not good when you have a heavyweight champion go down to another division, because sometimes what happens is that they become like an upper mid card. You look at somebody like AJ Styles in WWE. He's contended for the title, but he's won mid-card titles. So sometimes when you win too many mid-card titles, you lose your credibility. Or Rob Van Dam is a great example. He was like the ECW heavyweight champion and the WWE heavyweight champion, but after getting hardcore titles and other titles in the company, it hurts his legitimacy because he's not like consistently in the heavyweight championship picture. So if you have MJF in the tag team division, it really nerfs him a bunch, really. And then you also kind of wonder, and I think in a way it's almost like, is MJF, is he really just a company guy now, where it's almost like he's going to say, yes, sir, Tony, I will do the tag team division. I will like take a back seat. And then a bunch of fans can feel like he's taking a back seat, really. So that's another concern. I think the other concern on top of that is MJF is a good single star, and they lack a lot of single stars in AEW. Like I've said in my fantasy booking, you make Anthony Bowens, you make the Death Riders versus Team rated FTR, and like I was saying in my fantasy booking, you put Anthony Bowens as a fifth member, or you do 6-on-6, where you put Hobbs and Anthony Bowens, and then you do something like have the Death Riders have MJF. It's the Death Riders and MJF, really. That would be a really great thing. And then you can set up Anthony Bowens versus MJF in a feud. And like I said, you can do a feud where Max Caster goes to Anthony Bowens' house and beats up his husband. Like, that would be hot, compelling television. And that would do a lot of good. That would be really great heel heat, and that would work for MJF's character. But if he's in a tag team, he loses that. And then the other part of it is that his tag team partner really has to improve their caliber, really. Because the problem is that if you have somebody who can talk a lot and do a lot of great stuff, really, and then you have like the opponent that can't cut a promo, you run into like, what you see in a lot of movies of the smart small guy and the big dumb guy type of dynamic, really. So, you may also be hurting yourself by making him a single star, because that way you are, by not making him a single star, because AEW has too many factions in their company. They have a lot of tag teams as well, but their issue is too many factions. And then the other big issue is that you may be like, nerfing him a bit, or you may put him in a tag team that's not on his caliber. And then there are some fantasy matches that he can do. MJF versus Daniel Garcia, is a good fantasy match. Anthony Bowens as a babyface versus MJF, that would elevate him so much, really. You can do Swerve versus MJF. You can do Adam Page versus MJF. There's so many like things you can get out of him as a single star. So maybe the tag team division can hurt him. And I think the last, argument would be, the last kind of like negative would be Jon Moxley, which is that the Death Riders things is not working. It's tanking the ratings. He's not a good champion. The story has a lot of plot holes. And ultimately, you have to ask yourself, are people going to be happy to see Darby Allin in a couple of months? Are they going to be like, okay, well, you're the asshole who went to Mount Everest, so we had to sit through, 6 months or 7 months of television that was crap, really, with Moxley because you wanted to climb Mount Everest and you prioritized yourself, really. And then the other issue is who legitimately is going to have great matches with Darby Allin, because Darby Allin versus Bobby Lashley, Brody King, and other people are bad matches. You have the small guy beating up the big guy type of thing, really. So if you do something like you pivot and then you have MJF, you have MJF versus you have MJF and he actually is facing Moxley for the title at Double or Nothing or Dynasty. You set something up, or you have Moxley get very badly injured at Double or Nothing, and then he has to be stripped of the title, and then you have a tournament, and then you have MJF in charge of the Death Riders, and he fixes that, and then you end it at All In. And in Texas, then you fix a lot of problems that way. So I think that the other issue is that if he's in the tag team division, it takes an opportunity to take the title off of Moxley. And no matter what you guys say, he's not a good champion. The ratings are going down. He does a lot of shock value things. He doesn't make sense when he talks. You have like stars like the Dark Order, Private Party, Orange Cassidy, and other people, and like Jay White and other people who are not built up that well contending after him. So the best reset you can do is like do a story where MJF takes over, really, or you have him join Anarchy in the Arena, and maybe Moxley gets an injury, or Moxley gets hurt really bad, or he gets really damaged, and then what happens is that Christian Cage comes out, cashes in, and before he cashes in, MJF punches him in the face with a diamond ring. So Christian becomes champion. Then you set up Moxley, MJF, and Christian for the AEW championship at like Blood and Guts, because I think that should be a pay-per-view, and then the winner goes to All In. The winner is the champion and gains the Death Riders. There's so many things that they can kind of do if they have MJF in the tag team division to take the title off of Moxley, and then try to add try to revitalize the heavyweight division, really. So maybe having him in the tag team division isn't a good idea. But I think it's important to really experiment and to say, you know what, MJF should not be a wrestler feuding with Jeff Jarrett. He's going to be feuding with Adam Page next. It's really being foreshadowed. And then the other issue is that you have to make sure that when he loses, it means something. If you want to build Adam Page up, then he should beat MJF, and Adam Page should be Adam Page versus Moxley at Dynasty, unless you do Moxley and Eddie Kingston, or you do something like I said, you have Anthony Bowens versus MJF, and he should be beating MJF, really. Or you know what, but you won't do something like maybe Danny Garcia, or Jack Perry, or like another babyface that's not built up that well, So there's a lot that or Jeff Jarrett even, there's a lot that they can do to elevate MJF. And definitely the tag team division can be a really great thing for him. It could be something new, it could be something big. And definitely my storyline with him and Wardlow would be really great, because in a way, with Wardlow, like I said, if MJF is in Hollywood, you do 2-on-1 matches with Wardlow, and Wardlow dominates people. You're building him up for a couple of months, reintroducing him, and then one day he can go after the AEW championship, and then you have a new big star in that. And then he turns babyface, and then you rebuild Wardlow, and then you go off to the races with that. So I think the tag team division can be a great option for MJF, but definitely the thing he's doing with Jeff Jarrett is not a great option for him.